Okay, so now we have reverse engineered infection, cancer, disease, chronic illness, autoimmune disorders, obesity, emaciation, why people die. And this, let me just make this so simplified for you. Heat, okay, whether it's a group of people or a group of proteins that coagulate, congregate together for whatever reason, whether it's a riot or an activist type of marching, heat is infection. Now, infection doesn't actually have, infection has its pejorative context, but infection means that there's a lot of people that are congregating together. There are a lot of proteins that are congregating together and or producing. So when you hear about the riots back in 2020, there's a lot of people hanging out together, developing energy and heat, and then things came out of it. The Rittenhouse thing, all the other stuff that goes on when there are large groups of people hanging out together. Infection will happen because that's the nature of infection. It is about large groups of people hanging out together, large amounts of proteins coagulating together. And so yesterday when I felt the heat in my face being around my husband, and I didn't sneeze, I sneezed a little bit, but not too much. I sneezed a little bit, I coughed up a little bit of mucus. Then I was out on the boat, and we had one person around us because they were also doing some navigating out there, fishing and stuff. But I wasn't around a large group of people, and I didn't go into any establishment with large groups of people or even a few people. I pretty much was on the boat, hung out with my husband, met with one of his friends, and then it was out in the open air. So, but my husband has a lot of energy to him. He has heat to him because, do I want to say he has infection? He has a lot of proteins that produce a lot of other proteins that reproduce, replicate, that coagulate, that are jailed within his colon, within his lymph nodes. Will that heat turn into something? Potentially, if it's not being released. And so you wonder why at night when you guys are sleeping and your temperature rises at night. I notice that sometimes I sweat at night, not lately, but you notice that when you go to sleep, like when I take a nap after dealing with a variant that I'm not used to, and I wake up, I'm like really hot, like I'm taking off my sweater, and I'm like, dude, and it's because the amount of defenses that were brought up during my reparations, during my sleep, my overnight, or even a nap during the day, because my body had to repair, and it had to produce proteins to repair and protect and release. And then of course when you're pooping, you're peeing, when you're blowing your nose, coughing up stuff, you're releasing that extra energy. But what goes on is people don't release that extra energy. So they have riots within their body. They have groups of things going on in their body that are all congregating together, and eventually something happens, like what happened with Rittenhouse. Something happens, and this is within your body. So now I'm taking it from the macro, what you learned about just from all the different things that went on in the last couple years. Now I take it to the micro, and you're understanding now what cancer, disease, and chronic illness is. It is infection because it's a vast amount of growth being triggered by a vast amount of things that are growing, that are eating and replicating. So when you're eating so much food on this end, right, all the consumption, somebody has to go and grow the food to make up for what is being lost, being eaten. And so then you almost have to take all the byproducts of what is being eaten and turn that into food again, which is what they're doing, in third world countries, recycling the water and recycling the waste material into something that is usable. And that is the whole green machine, is recycle, reduce, reuse. Okay, instead of just straight consumption. And so then you understand then every time you feel heat, that's your body in defense mode. But if you're not releasing the heat, like if you feel heat and you feel pain, you feel this and feel that, and you try to stop it with a cure or with some kind of remedy, or you're starving your body because you don't want to feel the heat, then you are keeping that specific entity that is causing the vast amount of heat in your body, and that will turn into something diagnosable later on. And people don't realize that they have lost sense of their own biorhythms because of the amount of distractions or the amount of remedies and cures and things that don't allow them to feel anything. So they never can make the connection that the heat that they're producing is the infection in their body that must be released, but not released to such a point where you turn into the crypt keeper, because that's what also happens on the other side of those in the detoxes world, is that they've released so much from all the detoxes and all their different cleanses that there's nothing left to them. They look like the crypt keeper. They have lost so much substance. And so you need to have a certain amount of heat, 98.6 thereabouts. When you have your temperature raises, there's infection going on because your body's fighting something. But it also, those excess proteins that were produced to protect you also need to be released, but you still have the B cell memories and the T cell memories, but those actually are supposed to pepticize or do a programmed cell death. So then you're only left with the B cell memories. So that way you remember, why it is the body remembers why things happen, and so it produces proteins to release proteins. But then also too, the B cell memories help you remember how to do your job, how to carry on your daily activities. Okay, when people jump into cold water and they're shocking their system, you think that's gonna help you? But they do that for therapies. When people go do hot yoga, and they produce so much heat in their body where it then strangulates the body's ability to breathe. And so they're using so much energy to protect you that you're actually taking away substance and intelligence. And so all the saunas, the hot yogas, and all the heat-related therapies are also going to work against you. And then all the cold cryotherapies are going to work against you. So you see how extreme the system goes when it comes to anesthetizing you from not feeling stuff so you can be in the game. I can still be in the game relative to my intention of how I'm going to play the game, and I'm not going to play the game to compromise. I'm not going to sacrifice myself for the game. Many people are sacrificing themselves for the game, and they don't know it. They call it life. Well, right now we're redefining what life is. Okay? And when you redefine what life is, then you start establishing balance. And when you're releasing all the excess entities in your body, causing you to consume so much, and when you consume so much, you're developing a vast amount of energy, okay, then that also is a domino effect out in the community, because somebody has to keep producing for you to consume. So you're taxing your neighbor down the street when you're consuming so much. And so then there's a whole, and that's why we're in this Georgia Guide Zone. So I wanted to simplify what heat is when it comes out there to the macro level, when you have all these celebrations of people congregating together, the parties and all the get-togethers. I mean, I may go once in a while to something if my husband asks me to go to something that it's important to him. Okay, I know I'll have to recover from that, because that's a vast amount of infection when you're around large groups of people, because you know that's people are exchanging microbes and everything that they've ever done as far as defending themselves against their own body using the food supply and the elements. And so your body's going to have to develop proteins against that to protect you from something that's trying to weaponize your environment against you. And so you have to realize how much you can afford and what you're willing to deal with after you come home and recover from that type of situation. And so just know that overnight your body produces a lot of heat because going through reparations, and that's why people cough when they get respiratory infections, and it usually happens overnight, or they get heart attacks and strokes. Some survive, some don't. It happens overnight. It happens through reparations. When you go to sleep, things happen through reparations, okay? And the rapid production of any protein can be more than what some people can handle. And so that's why not congregating around so many people when you're immunocompromised, is better than thinking that whatever therapy you're doing is going to protect you. Because your therapy, hi sugar, hold on Shuggy, hold on. There we go. Your therapy is relative to your movements. And so your therapy can work for you relative to your expectation when you're home by yourself for the most part, not hanging out with people. But when you're hanging out with people, you're triggering your immune system to defend you. in whatever programming that you have conducted for whatever reason. And so when you're around large groups of people, it'll create heat because you have to defend yourself against not only one person, but now 50 other people. I can defend myself against one or two people. But then when that starts multiplying, and now you have to defend yourself against 50, 100, 200, you're overwhelmed. And you have to be extremely strong to be in a crowd of people in this environment, especially if you're immunocompromised. Which is why they say wear the masks, because the mask can give you some sort of level of protection, but it's not 100%, but it might lessen the viral load if you really are sensitive to the environment. So, but yesterday, because you have a reality based upon how your biochemistry is reacting to your environment. So right now, people live in a very limited reality. They don't know that at some point down the road, if they stay home more than not, release those little demons inside of them, regardless of therapeutic status, and then when they go out there and they're not heavily therapized to where the body's producing so many proteins to protect it against its own environment, that you'll feel the heat, but the heat won't be exponential. Like yesterday, I felt the heat in my face when my husband came home, and that was it, because that was my first lines of defense. So that heat told me there was proteins being produced to protect me against my husband. And then I was blowing my nose, maybe sneezed a few times. My dog sneezed a few times, and she's releasing mucus out of her back end. And she also sneezes and whatever. And I'm doing that too. And that's the extent of it. It doesn't go further than that because I have a very strong first line of defense because I developed that myself. But if you're staying secured in the reality that you're in, with the predispositions and the deficits you hold within, then can you really afford to be out there trying to defend yourself against 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, 100, 200 people? Someone who is bigger bone like my husband, he's taking on the world, releasing a little bit because I feel it, not releasing a lot, or he'd have infection and be sick. But you can see the changes in him. And that's what we've accepted as far as the aging process, that whatever things we pick up that produce heat will cannibalize us over a progressive certain amount of time. And you see the aging process. When your minerals are being taken away because the body is using up a vast amount of resources to protect you and keep you within your expectations, but eventually people can't do their jobs anymore. They have to change jobs. Eventually people, they age out. They have to, that's why retirement is what it is. Why retirement's at 67. That's been programmed in our society, is that we have retirement at 67. You get a certain amount of Social Security in America, and then you can get more if you don't retire until 71 or 72 or 73, I forget. You get more money if you retire later. And so the system has already programmed people to eventually, to retire in their late 60s. And so I saw someone say on Facebook that they can go to a bingo or some place for retirees, and they're 50 years old. I'm gonna be 49. I'm 48. I'll be 49 next year, February 5th. I'll be 49. I don't even feel like I'm whatever that is. People saying in their 50s, they don't feel like that they're ready to retire, but a lot of people are in that place where their body's breaking down at 46, 47, and they can't wait to retire. They're ready to retire now because of how many predispositions and B cells and T cells creating so much heat, either replicating so many proteins that they're obese, or taking away so much of their substance that they weigh next to nothing and their body's falling apart, and they're still living their same lifestyle, haven't really changed too much except to take some time off to repair some damage, but now they're at a deficit. And then they'd be afraid to get up too quick or to do something. Like yesterday, I jumped off the boat. Okay, now when you're not realizing how weak you are as far as your bones because of you're just so used to how you feel in your head, but you don't realize your body's breaking down. If I've had sprains and stuff in my ankle, and I've been to the hospital for it, getting a boot or something. Finally, I think it has strengthened within the last few years, But if I jumped off the boat and I didn't feel any break, nothing broke. But when people don't realize how frail their body is because they think in their head that they're young, but their body actually is falling apart, and they jump off the boat and then they break an ankle. And then they're like, what the hell? I broke my ankle, just jumped off the boat. They're like, I did that a couple years ago and I didn't break an ankle. Why now? And people are like, oh, I just landed wrong. They find every way to figure out how to rationalize why they broke an ankle jumping off a boat. No, because you have things inside of you that are eating all of your minerals, breaking your body down. You're not releasing the demons and then repairing your body with the food and maximizing nutrition. And so when people just get up and they don't do anything that vastly energetic, and they just get up and they roll their ankle, now they're down for the next couple weeks. That's how things are right now with how dynamic this environment is. When you are out there with everybody, with all those microbes eating away at you, and you're not replenishing, repairing, or releasing. And so the heat is letting you know that your body is repairing, and you need to feed the heat too. And so, because the heat is also the energy to repair, and the heat is also the regenerate to release, and the heat is also is the production of your protection. So those little rogue viral T cells that are cannibalizing you don't eat everything in sight. And so that's something that I it'll be interesting when I write about that. So I'm getting everything all figured out in my head. I mean, I couldn't just stop at immortality and all that. I had to go way to the other end of it, which is the different gods and the Sumerian pantheon, the Greek pantheon, and then just everything's a simulation in politics, religion, science. And I wrote all about those in different aspects and different contexts based upon my understanding at the time. And then I kept adding more information on top of information on top. And then all of a sudden everything is connecting. And then you realize what heat is. And you realize you don't want to be out there if you are definitely immunocompromised. Regardless of therapeutic status, you don't want to be out there because you can't afford to take on people's microbes and have your body produce so many T cells to protect you from those microbes, which is how the therapies market has I don't know how they positioned their taglines and their marketing schemes, because people aren't releasing those B cells and T cells at the rate that they need to. If they were home on their own, yeah, they could do a therapy or not do a therapy, and they'd be okay if they can handle it and release the demons and eat food and be all okay. But that's not what's going on. People are not staying home. They're not keeping their protection to themselves, and they're out there, and it's everybody's choice. They said, hey, you wanted to have everything open. You wanted to have your bars and your restaurants and all of your venues open with no statuses to say to anybody, no masks, no nothing. Well, you asked for it. And when you ask for something like that, then you can't blame anyone when the body falls apart. If someone's got to warn you that there's a lot of reverse psychology. And what's going to be the reality is when you jump off a boat or get up really quickly or do this or do that, and your ankle, your hip, your leg, you have to get surgery in all the different places because things are not working correctly. And you just think it's my time. It's the aging process. Yeah, well, we're into a new simulation. You don't have to end up like that. But again, with any simulation that is transitioning, it is a transition process. And it's releasing the old world, the old ways, the old belief systems, and taking on new information and realizing that the way you lived your life before may not necessarily translate the same way in this new world. If you want to live the old way, then you will not have a long lifespan. And you'll still be able to leave with dignity, and you can take your politics, religion, science, and do whatever you want with it. And you can say, yeah, I had a great life. Here's my legacy. This is what I left behind. A little bit of money for my kids who are going to repeat the same mistakes. And then that genetic line will be completely done with at some point. Because the kids will have compound predispositions from the vast amount of different microbes that they were not aware of that were so influential that it stunted their development, stunted their evolutionary adaptation process. It stunted everything. And then they'll be exploited by someone who knows better than they do because they never bothered to. Their parents never bothered to teach them anything different. And that will be the shortening of the genetic lines because of the lack of awareness of how their own immune system works, which is one large negative and can be programmed in any way possible. You can program anyone's immune system for anything against anything. And you've seen it when they're using wheat germ for oncology. So imagine using that stuff in different therapies, using the food supply in different therapies, and the body sees that as an enemy and develops a resistance against it, and then you try to eat the same food and you can't because your body goes into inflammation. That's how it's being done through the therapies market. And then if you don't have a strong first line of defense, you'll be taking that in, and those little microbes will be commandeering your system, and you won't maximize nutrition, and your body will fall apart, and it's happening to people. I'm just trying to say it doesn't have to happen that way. All right, bye.